welcome to this online discussion on the Belarusian student protests in 2020 and 2021. My name is Gabriele Freitag. I'm the Managing Director of the German Association for East European Studies. Today's discussion takes place in the framework of the Forum for Historical Research on Belarus, and I will briefly introduce the forum to you. But let me start with some technical information. Our discussion will be held in Belarusian and in English. We have simultaneous interpretation by Ales Lavinets and Veronika Mazurkiewicz, and I would already like to say thanks to them for the efforts. Languages can be selected using the globe icon on the bottom bar of your screen. And you will also find further instruction in the chat. And a very important note, this event will be recorded and published on our YouTube channel. As I already just said, this discussion takes place, is organized in the framework of the Forum for Historical Research on Belarus. The forum is run by the German Association for East European Studies, by DGO, and it is financed by the German Academic Exchange Service. The forum is a platform for exchange on Belarusian history in its transnational contexts. And our partners are historians from Belarus who had to leave the country because of repressions and who now live in exile in Germany, Poland, Lithuania, and in other countries. But we also reach out to critically minded historians who are still in Belarus. And the forum, of course, also includes historians from Germany and from other countries in Europe and outside. So, and what does it do, the forum? It offers spaces for a protected exchange, but also opportunities for public online discussions, like our event today, for conferences, and it also offers short-term scholarships for young researchers. So I advise you do go to our website to get more information, and you will find the link to our website in the chat. And I'm very happy to announce that after 2 years of intense work, we have received further financial support, and in our second phase, which has already started in the beginning of 2024, and which runs again for 2 years, we have a special focus on oral history. Alessia Belanovic-Petz coordinates the activities of the forum together with Elisaveta Wunderwald, and thanks to both of them for not only organizing the forum, but also for organizing today's event. And our topic today is Belarusian student protests, perspectives from participants and witnesses. As you all know, student protests played a significant role in the anti-authoritarian movement that swept Belarus in 2020 and 2021. Young individuals, driven by their civic conviction, organized protest marches, public singing, and demonstrations on campuses. And since universities played such a vital role in the protest, they also became a site of severe and very brutal repression. And it is the aim of today's discussion to analyze these events of 2020 and 2021. So how did student protests emerge in an authoritarian setting that was lacking a tradition of academic freedom? What was the attitude of university teachers towards these protests? How do the protests of 2020 fit into the historical context of student protests in Belarus? How can evidence of those events be gathered? And what role does oral history play in this? And I would like to briefly mention that it was the protests in Belarus, the student protests in Belarus in 2020, that really drew the attention of DGO to the status of scholars at risk. And ever since 2020, DGO has seized various opportunities to give support to those who have been persecuted or still persecuted. And in this context, I would also like to draw your attention to a website that we have launched together with other partners. It is called 100 times Solidarity, 100 Mal Solidarität. It documents the fate of political prisoners in Belarus. And again, you will find a link in the chat. I'm very, very grateful to Aliaksandr Parshankou, who suggested today's topic to us. Aliaksandr is a PhD student at Charles University in Prague. He was himself a very active participant, in fact, one of the organizers of the protests 4 years ago. Aliaksandr is a historian. He was a fellow of our forum, and he's still a very active participant in our activities. Aliaksandr, thanks a lot for that. And with this, I hand over to you. Thank you.
Дякую велике, шановна Gabriele. Ради усіх.
Thank you very much, dear Gabriele. I welcome you, dear colleagues, dear friends. Thank you for joining us on this discussion today. Thank you that you found time to join us. And thank you for the interest to this topic of the student protests in Belarus. I hope that the next hour will be interesting for us and will discuss in depth this topic and draw some conclusions. Of course, student protests became an important part of protests in 2020-2021. And the topic of the last student protests is very wide. I think we should, I think several topics could become topics of scientific research. It seems that today there are no more student protests, but still they do participate in some type of protest. Up to 40 students are in jail currently in Belarus, but students are looking for freedom. They have immigrated and they've launched their organizations abroad. They continue participating in different projects, and they continue in working for solidarity. And this solidarity allows our students to be together and have a voice. First of all, I am happy to welcome Mr. Viktor Shadurski, a free historian, a dean for many years of the most prestigious faculty in Belarus, the Faculty of International Relations in Belarus. Hello, Mr. Shadurski. Then welcome to Tatsiana Astrouskaya, who is a PhD in history, a researcher, and she works for Herder Institute in Marburg, and she specializes in the newest history of Belarus. Thank you very much for your participation. And my warm welcome to Tatsiana Yekelchik, an ex-student of the Belarusian State University. She is now a student of a Czech technical university in Prague. She's an ex-political prisoner, and she was sentenced as a part of this famous student case. So again, welcome to everyone. And now, Tatsiana Yekelchik, the floor is yours. I have a question to you. Let's start from the beginning with your memories, with your experience. You were a participant, direct participant. Do you remember how this student protest looked like? Can you tell us a little bit about the student case? What was it? How was it? And tell us what you've learned during those 2.5 years in jail.
Дякую, Ali, our conversation. So in 2020 year, with the beginning of studying year, many mass protests took part in almost all Belarusian universities. we opposed violence against civilians, repressions against students. And students from different universities, we didn't even communicate with each other. We just felt the same. We just felt that we need to oppose events in Belarus somehow, and it took us some time to start collaborate with students from different universities. But in the very beginning, we even didn't have some common plan for different universities. Of course, so we, as I already said, we organized peaceful actions at universities. Of course, we tried to legalize our meetings, our events. We tried to communicate with these attempts were not successful. In the November of 2020 year, 12 students from different universities were arrested by KGB. Soon we were expelled from universities, and finally we were sentenced to 2 years and 6 months of penal colony. And this case became quite popular with the name students case. So, and I'm also one of participants of this case. So, I think that's all.
Дякую, Таня. А чи можеш ти
Thank you, Tanya. But can you tell us how those 2.5 years in jail influenced you? What you felt, how this was to turn from this wave of protests, from this strong protest. Everyone was waiting for a victory. Well, many people were waiting for a fast victory, and you appeared behind the bars in jail. How was it?
Yes, it was very to feel that students were one of the biggest powers and one of the biggest movements in our country. At this moment, in autumn of 2020 year, of course, for us, it was really unexpected. It was nonsense that it could turn out that we can come to prison. And for now, after these 2 years and a half, in my opinion, I would say that I don't think that I would like to change something in what I did. Even I would like to do even more. If I knew that I will come to prison, I would say that I would do more because in my opinion, I would say that we're quite lucky that we got to prison in 2020 year, and we were sentenced only for 2 years and 6 months. Now nowadays it's hard to imagine that Belarusian can have such a small sentence for some protests. So yes.
Вялікі дзякуй, Таня. Мы яшчэ вернемся, я думаю, до гэтай тэмы.
Thank you very much, dear Tanya. We will get back to this topic, but now I would like to ask Professor Viktor Shadurski, what was the attitude of teachers to students' protests, but also the administration of the universities? Good afternoon, everybody. It is a difficult question. Well, there were no sociological research. One might only have some empirical thoughts or ideas. Most professors supported the students, but they learned helplessness didn't allow them to join the students. As you know, in my university, the council of the university adopted a declaration supportive of the protesters. So it was at that time. Well, among the teachers, there were also those who were partisans of the so-called Ruski Mir, of the Russian world, and they didn't see any Belarusian identity or the Belarusian European choice. And also among students, but also among professors, there were persons that were just career-minded. They were thinking about promotions, receiving some points, and this category of people are always open to switch camps. Well, and it is to some extent dangerous that such people would switch when the democracy, if democracy wins, they would switch sides very easily. But as a general, the majority of professors were positive, were supportive of the protests. So the protests were against the archaical regime, and the majority of the teachers and even those who were elderly persons, they realized which way the system was heading to. So they understood what would be the consequences. I do remember the 1980s when there were meetings, when students discussed, when we discussed different issues, why not to wear jeans as symbols of the West, and so on. So, and it was really time that was to some extent useless to have such futile discussions. Well, at the same time, when we talk about the administration of the universities, well, they are also representatives of the Belarusian nation. They live in the society, but at the same time, they are very mindful of what is expected from them. They are pretty much aware of their position, and they were following the events. So I would put it this way. I would like to ask you, you as a dean of the department, why did you support these protests? So you were liberal, you were open to democratic change. Why did you decide that you were with your students, that you were with your people, but not with Lukashenko's regime? Well, my student life and PhD student life took place during the perestroika years. So we already said goodbye to the totalitarianism, to the communism, and we had these values. So I represent these generation of not of 60s but of the 80s that were open to change. So each person makes his or her own choice. So it in small deeds and in great deeds. So I was thinking about that and also discussed that where is our choice? And I had my own red line that nobody from students or professors would not be expelled for political reasons from my department. So I made this choice. When this line is crossed and they would put pressure on me, and I would be instrumental in that, it would not acceptable for me on the moral grounds. So it was the moral imperative for me, and I stick to it. So I was there for I could still stay at my position for several months. But anyway, thank you very much, dear Viktor, for your position. And now I would like to ask Tatsiana Astrouskaya and ask her to introduce us to the context from the historical perspective of this protest. So how can we characterize this protest of 2021 from the historical perspective? And can you also name the main reasons, the main causes of this protest? And also, could you place it in the context of the 20th century? How student protests were unfolding in the European countries, and what is about the Belarusian?
Дякую велике за запрошення.
This audience and also with such esteemed speakers and people who really were inside of this. So I will try to offer my interpretation, but of course you are free to maybe to question it and so on, because I am only, of course I was involved morally, but I never was in Belarus during this time. So I am only an observer in a sense. And of course, for historians, it's hard to give some judgments on in such short after such short time passed, and it didn't pass in the sense that repressions, of course, but also resistance continues. So if you try to situate this student protest of 2020, 2021 in the historic but also cultural context related to the phenomenon of student activism in general, then Belarusian society is, of course, a quite specific sense, in a sense that it was all the time under long and almost unbreakable period of oppression. So academic freedom and everything that we often associate with student life as a university did not exist there for a very long time. I even won't be wrong if I say that there were some only very short moments of relative academic freedom, for example, in the 1920s, perhaps, before Stalin started his cultural revolution, or perhaps in the late 1980s, beginning of the 1990s, as Professor Shadurski said, also, of course, to 2020, yeah, and universities and in general system of education in Belarus was always under the strictest control. And there was practically no history or no intellectual tradition to rely on. Of course, there was this tradition, but it was always suppressed. It was always unavailable for the majority. Both authoritarian regimes, the Soviet one and the Lukashenko one, did everything to silence this tradition, to break it, to render it insignificant, to show that actually what is happening now, this is the most important, and they most know this long tradition of free thinking, of academic freedom, and so on. So of course, myself as historian, I'm always puzzled with how this unexpected outbreak of freedom was at all possible. From history, we know that students and young people have been always one of the most dynamic, open parts of the society, which reacted vividly, directly, and quickly to injustice, to societal pressure. The examples of French, Polish, and global student protests of 1968, or anti-nuclear protests of the 1980s in Germany, for example, where also many young people were involved, or the recent example of Fridays for Future movement are perhaps the most obvious ones to which we would like to kind of relate or compare the events which happened in Belarus. But when you look at these protests, and you see that most of these protests appear in the societies where freedom of expression was, at least for some part, allowed or possible. And when we think of students' protests, then you see that this is the greater part of this community, of the student community, which is involved in this protest. And of course, it is much easier, in a sense, to join in the movement, to do what others do, to demand the change, which also other people around you demand. But in Belarus, as we see it from the students' recollections, this was not the case was a little bit different. So even if there were many students and teachers, as we heard from Viktor Shadurski, there were still not the majority. Yeah, there were still many who were silent in this moment. Yeah, so I tend to see the students' protest in Belarus in 2021 as an uprising rather than protest. Uprising is something greater, something more difficult, because as an uprising of young people against the society and as a really existential struggle. So in a sense, which is the difference? So it's not like when people get together and just demand, this a kind of break with conservatives and conservative values. But this is a struggle for survival, in a sense, and this always involved also an individual uprising of individual against the system. So it was always an individual decision, and it required more personal responsibility and, of course, also more courage. But simultaneously, we can also speak more of some cross-group connections that brought together different groups across the societies. Yeah, so students and workers, for example, or people of different age and social background. This was also what was particular with in this Belarusian movement of 2020. And this what happened back then resembles then rather for me the societal mobilization, or what happened during Prague Spring of 1968. And therefore the figure of Jan Palach and his tragic and heroic act of self-immolation that Belarusian students chose as their symbol is not an accidental one. But also this returns me to what I said in the beginning about this tradition. So I see here also a certain intention, a need to rely on this tradition, and we really need restoring this tradition and showing that also the first Belarusian university was opened in 1921. There was a long history of studentship that started in the 15th century, and there were actually many students who went to study elsewhere and came back to Belarus and brought not only knowledge but also, the kind of skills how to build society anew and how to communicate in a different way with the system, with authorities, and so on. So maybe I stop here if you have additional questions, because I see Viktor is raising his hand.
Дякую щире. Я бачу
Thank you very much. I see Professor Shadurski's reaction. Victor, do you have a question, or you would like to argue? No need to argue. I would like to get back to the point that the first university was opened in 1921, and this university had also traditions, draw from earlier traditions, but this university was born within the Soviet dictatorship, where there was an ideological control over students. I do agree with you that there was a short period, six-year period from the end of 80s until the mid-90s. There was a period of liberalization in universities. Well, so there was a beginning of a model of a new university tradition, and you know the university by definition is a place where there is a need for change, and there is a thirst for freedom and intellectual freedom. And I remember from my own experience at the beginning of the 90s, 80s, students of philosophy department at the history department, actually, majoring in philosophy. So they submitted a request to the authorities at the beginning of 80s, asking for changes in the curriculum, and also in how to build a better university. There was also the experience of this called Maestronia workshop meetings, and there was also space for TV programs, and also after the year 2015 there were some changes, because Belarus position on Russia's annexation of Crimea was supported by the West, and there was a kind of liberalization at that time. And during this short period, there was a new generation, non-frightened, let's say, generation of students that came to the fore. So the year 2020 was not an accidental year. Well, there were student exchanges, and at this period, Belarus was the world champion for the number per capita of Schengen visas. It was an achievement. So young people could travel. They learned new experience, and they wanted to bring this new experience to their own country. This is a very important point. Many thanks, dear Viktor. Now I have a question to Tanya Yekelchik, as a representative of this non-frightened generation. Well, what motivated you to participate? Why did you decide? What were the reasons of your protest activities? So you raised up and you joined the solidarity chains and other protests.
Thank you for interesting question. First of all, elections or presidential elections were not so far in past. It was all emotions, thoughts were very fresh, and I felt that I just can't study as usual after such terrible events in country. And with time, I think repressions of students, when some students were expelled, it is also forced us to protest more and more.
Дякуй. Я хочу запытацца цяпер зноў у
I would like to ask Viktor, because now we are reaching to this prize that we have, that thanks to one of the German funds, this 25 essays of students that where students were speaking about their feelings and thoughts about the protests. So can you please tell us about your impressions? You've read those essays, you worked with those texts, and you know many of those students. So what impressions do you have? Maybe you were surprised by something that you've read. What do you remember? Well, yeah, I can speak about those essays during several hours, but I don't have enough time here now. So, Tatsiana, thank you. And you, Alexander, thank you for contributing to this project. It was done in the framework of Science at Risk Foundation, and we thank this foundation for this project. Because in this way we've documented the impressions, this hope that students shared at that time. Probably now it's not the best time, but we have it documented. So I was impressed by the fact that there are so many open young people, very impressive. Some of them have participated in political activities before 2020. Someone have joined just then because they saw what was happening, and they understood that there was something wrong with the country, because the people were fantastic, but something didn't work. The political information and Soviet style, that didn't work for them, for those young people. They wanted to be free. They wanted their free future. It's not always that they've understood clearly that what they want to achieve, but they understood clearly what they don't want, what they want to reject. They believed in Belarus. What impressed me, but not in a very positive way, is that the student case that Tatsiana was telling about, how teachers and administration of the universities were part of this student case, because they falsified this process against 12 Belarusians. This process was open. Everyone could see what was happening, and there are witnesses of this process. And this theater, I would say, was also performed by teachers and administrators of universities who testified against their students. I remember when we studied history of the Tsar Russia, when teachers didn't participate in such things, they quitted their jobs. And in Belarus, they testified against Belarusian students. Teachers should protect their students. They should teach them, but not provide fraudulent evidence against them. So those teachers and this part of academics community was just used. They never could be teachers again. So you think this was done in purpose? Yes, this was done in purpose to compromise those teachers. And I was really shocked by this. Your students, what did they do? They were drinking tea or singing songs during breaks. No, they interfered in the teaching process. And well, I was not pleased by that, of course, and this hindered the trust in academics community. maybe this added some respect to academic community among the power agencies, but not among general people. Thank you, Viktor. Tatsiana Astrouskaya, I would like to ask you, as a person who works with oral history and with texts of the newest history, probably you've read those essays. I will share them in the link in our chat. So do you think those essays are useful to understand Belarusian history and the history of student protests? In general, what is the role of oral history in rethinking violence that young people in Belarus face?
The whole bunch of questions. Yeah, of course, I read these essays, and they're really impressive and touching. And yeah, to write down this experience that you just came through, this is really very, very valuable. And of course, for many generations ahead. And I think we not only need to publish these recollections and to make them available for historians, but we also need to kind of to talk about them, to show them, to present them again and again, to make them really a part of collective memory, because this is the problem. I told about this intellectual tradition, and this is the problem also of Belarusian society, that we forget quite quickly, and this is of course what authorities do us to and people in Belarus to forget, these moments of freedom. And so I think every school pupil, every child in Belarus should know what happened then back then, and so we really need to make it public and available for everyone. I think this is also very valuable material, in a sense also that it shows, it kind of indicates that the ways, the paths to freedom, to this decision, to be free, to kind of to protest, to choose, to resist, they are very different. Yeah, there is no one story. Some people were born in a family which educated them in a very specific sense, which, for example, the history books, alternative history books were available, and so on, songs and sounds. And some learned through friends, some didn't know anything about that some different history or some different actuality of Belarus is possible. And all they were born in a very different societies and grew up in a very different societies. And at school, I didn't have chance to learn something alternative. Sometimes I did it at school in vice versa. But also it shows that the choices of the moments when a person decides to to step in a very different way, to protest, to go forward and to say something against the majorities, they are also very different, and this gives us hopes. But that there are so many ways of choosing freedom that they can be never exhausted in a way. But we also need more recollections of such kind. We also need more recollections from other people, of people who maybe, were not courageous enough to talk at this moment, but who still may be sitting and thinking that I could have done something, or I observed something. Or we also need recollections from these people, or also maybe from people who chose to collaborate, chose this career path about which Professor Shadurski told. Maybe they will also decide on some particular moments, to sit and to write down or to tell about their story. Maybe at some moment they also will decide to share their experience, because of course it's hard to have this understanding of the society without also this part. and why they chose, the opposite side, why they chose the path of unfreedom. So we certainly need more recollections and oral history materials, and we also need to make them public. Yes, and violence, your second question was about violence. I think, yeah, it's also very important to record all cases of violence, but I think also we used to, think of violence as something really brutal, and really something brutal comes up, then we think about it as violence. But what we actually face at universities or everywhere in the Belarusian society, in our everyday life, this is also the acts of violence. When, for example, students are forced to go voting, I mean, when we don't speak about this very brutal situation, when they're forced to go voting in the day before, then they also already face this act of violence. When they are forced, for example, when they criticized from the side of teachers, they are dressed not in a proper way, then they are also facing this act of violence. And this violence starts from this very moment, and where I think we were not really attentive enough to record, everything starts from the very small acts of violence. And we really need to record also these acts of violence, because where is the border, yeah? So we cannot say that this is important and this is important. Everything is important, which what really intrudes into your private and societal freedom, and academic, of course.
Дякую щире.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I agree with you totally. And here I would like to address Tatsiana Yekelchik. As Viktor mentioned, you also wrote an essay, and I think that some of them, you read some of them as well. So what, if you've read other essays, what have you discovered, and how is your essay linking with the context? What do you think?
Yes, of course, I read a lot of other essays, and here I completely agree with Tatsiana. All of them, they are very, very touching and very, very different, and they explore Belarusian topic and topic of Belarusian political prisoners from absolutely different sides. When I wrote my essay, I was so overflowed with thoughts, emotions, and with what I want to write about, that it was really difficult to concentrate on something. And to explore full picture, because how to say, and when I read the stories, unexpectedly, I thought that they will not touch me a lot, because I know all the stories. But unexpectedly, even when I read something familiar, touch very, very much. So yes.
Дякую, Таня. І тут
Thank you, Tanya. I have a question to you. I've received it from a participant. First, our participant wishes you all the best, and she's impressed by your courage. And she wants to ask, what was the most difficult thing for you in jail? Can you share this?
Quite difficult question. Difficult. The most difficult thing was I think the most difficult were thoughts about my family and my relatives on who are in freedom. It was difficult to think that that they what they think about me, and I always tried to support them, to say that I'm doing fine, and even if it was true, but of course I can't. It was really difficult to really convince my relatives that I'm fine, and I think it was the most hard part.
Дякую. Дякую за гэты
Thank you. Thank you for those touching words. A few words from my side. Evidently, the repressed students face different issues and problems, and of course, some are suffered psychologically. Someone went through imprisonment, and there is help, aid from Belarusians, from European institutions. Today we have a stipend scholarship for Belarusian students in SOLD 2 program. So you can address this program with questions. They have a help desk where you can write and get a consultation about what you can do and where you can find support if, for instance, you need scholarship. In Poland, there is a Kalinowski program. It has been active for almost 20 years. And this scholarship program helps students to get back to studies. And it's very important because if a person went through jail, through imprisonment, they need help to get back to the academic community. There are also other scholarships. I've shared a link to our project, Students for Students. It also supports repressed students. You can write there and get some mentor support or advice, or the Commission on Student Affairs in the Coordination Council that I had. We also help to resolve those issues. Now, please, Professor Shadurski, maybe you could tell us about possibilities, support options for Belarusian students.
For students in general, of course, for students that are now abroad, well, the main issues are related to the legalization, the scholarships, access to the labor market, and possibilities of finding a job. Our students do not expect having some social assistance. They want to work, and we see that in the neighboring countries in our region, our Belarusian students have good ratings, a good image. Well, students should be supported both at the community horizontal level, and there should be more groups, more communities. I hope that you are aware of the Belarusian businesses that are active. For example, in Poland, there are about 5,000 Belarusian businesses operating and here, and this is a new economic platform for such support. And I think what is the most important now for Belarusian students and for Belarusians who are in Belarus is to support to preserve themselves, but also to preserve their Belarusianness. My appeal to students, as many professors repeated, so do not run too much risk. So do not risk yourself, your lives. So preserve yourselves, but preserve also your Belarusianness. There are many opportunities. I think that those who are abroad should be helping the Belarusians inside the country. In this respect, there should be more academic works, more YouTube videos, and so on. We understand that we are laying foundations for a future Belarus, a future democratic European Belarus, and we have to work for that. Would Belarus be a kind of appendix of Russia, of unclear empire, which has very unclear and very vague purposes? So my appeal is to foster the Belarusian culture and the Belarusianness. So not only to students, but also to the faculty, to professors. We need Belarus. Belarus is a top value for us. Thank you very much. I would maybe ask more about more details. Dear Tatsiana Astrouskaya, can you share more information about opportunities in Germany? Is there enough such programs? What kind of support is it possible to expect?
The German Academic Exchange Service, which is directed exactly at the students at risk, at risk. And I think so. I know also Belarusian students who had possibilities to get fellowships within the frames of these programs. And in general, I would say that it is also you shouldn't be afraid of contacting German colleagues, for example, in Germany. If you see the university, which is really a university of your dream, just go there, write to them. Every teacher is really ready to help. So far I can say see and from my colleagues, they are all really happy and ready to invest much time in organization of these fellowships and support of students from Eastern Europe, and of course, including also Belarusian students. The other question is, I think there are like programs, but sometimes universities face these structural programs, and this kind of very complicated and bureaucratic organization of German universities unfortunately hinders this process. For example, these structures sometimes are not really flexible now. In order to be enrolled in the university, even if you are a refugee student, you have to provide certain package of documents to prove that you have appropriate skills, but also to prove that you underwent repressions. And sometimes these papers are not so easily accessible for many. So it is really important also to talk about these problems, and we try to also to talk about this problem. Of course, some kind of proof is necessary, but sometimes really the help is really needed now and here. Also, I think one of the problems that we face that this support is sometimes not sustainable enough, because the university is not only about studies, about the curriculum, it is about connections and people. And of course, refugee students who are coming, they are sometimes lacking language knowledge, sometimes they are also have some, need some psychological support. They just need some time, and sometimes they're not ready to, for example, connect and network with other students. And the university is also about networking. Networking is very important already on this very early stage to be able to build career. You need to, to connect and network with people, and therefore this connections are really important. So don't be afraid to talk to people and try to connect, maybe first of all within the Belarusian community, but then also people are really trying to help in this regard, and you need people to for your future career. So this is maybe which is now at the moment is not really in the best way organized from the part of universities, because they provide this funding, they provide also a place for study, but they don't really provide this care for students. And therefore, this networking within the Belarusian community, about which Viktor is talking, is also very important. But there are also many Belarusian now teachers and researchers outside Belarus, so you can go to them. They have these connections already, so we can help you in this regard. So please do this and don't be afraid of contacting us.
Дякую велике.
Well,
Бачу,
thank you very much. I see that Mr. Shadurski has a reaction. Just before that, dear listeners, you can add your questions to the Q&A session. I have one question from the chat. If you want to add more questions, please do this. This is the exact time when you can do that. So now, Mr. Shadurski, Professor Shadurski, can you add? Yes, I wanted to continue this topic that Tatsiana Astrouskaya started. This is the mission of those who work outside Belarus. The mission is to speak about Belarus, to tell others about real Belarus, to tell about Belarus to the foreign communities. Unfortunately, many citizens they have a negative, they perceive Belarus negatively. I don't understand. We all understand why. And our task now is to show that there is other Belarus, historic, European, cultural, interesting, and those essays, 25 essays that we've discussed, we have a project already. We've planned to interpret or to translate them into English and to publish them together with a professor from the UK. So maybe to illustrate it with drawings made by students themselves. So she's very optimistic about this project. Maybe we could make a documentary, we could film a documentary. So she has this feeling, and she knows how to preserve Belarusianness and how to tell the world about Belarus. So we have this unique possibility. Yeah, this is very important. So thank you for this possibility to provide translations for those stories. We need more books in Belarusian also, because Belarusian books will be available for all Belarusians. But as well as that, we need books in other languages, as this Tatsiana Astrouskaya published a book in German, and then she translated it into Belarusian. That's a good example. Thank you. And Tanya, can you tell us about the assistance and help that you've received in the Czech Republic? You are there. Maybe your experience will be useful for others.
When I moved here in Czech Republic, first of overall, I'm really thankful to they helped a lot me and some other student with a similar situation as me from Belarus. And significant help from Czech government sent to Office of Democratic Powers here in Czech Republic. Our student case became quite popular, and thanks to that, now I study in European university and receive scholarship from Czech Ministry of Education. So yes, I think my experience is quite positive in terms of support. And of course, I would like that all Belarusians who are in Belarus would have the same support and help.
Дякую, Таня.
Thank you, Tanya. I remind that 5 people from the student case appeared moved to the Czech Republic. So the Czech government was very welcoming. It's a good. It's a good practice also from with the help of Belarusian students who study in Czech Republic. So now I have my last question that I will address to every speaker. It's a difficult question, and it is difficult to reply even to myself for myself. So, what have you managed? What student protests managed to do, and what they didn't manage to do? What are their successes and failures of the student protests? So, Viktor, maybe you try first. Well, you know, there are poems of our Belarusian poets. Here I want to quote Vladimir Neklyaev. He was saying that persons were looking, they were almost people. So the Belarusian nation showed itself. People showed that they have values. They want a cozy country, a European country, a democratic country. They don't want to look for enemies. They want to look for partners, for cooperation. This is what we managed to do, actually. If someone says it was too early, we're not prepared, no, that's not true. This was the will of the Belarusian people, of those students who were not frightened. You see, there were so many participants. There were so many ways to express their protests. We celebrated the fact that we exist. Everyone understood it, and everyone was a part of it. Of course, the situation now is, well, it has deteriorated, but we could see the people, we could see the nation, and students are part of this nation. This is very positive. It was the success. And
yes,
Would you like to answer this question? And not to repeat, speaking about students, or what connects to students, in my opinion, we did everything what was possible. We tried our best, and we definitely changed Belarusian society
and Belarusian society now in some long process of changing. As also Viktor mentioned in the beginning, I was disappointed with this because, in my opinion, administrations they would could behave different, and they risked only their positions, only their working places, but if they would not be so scared to lose their places, maybe not so many students suffered, not so many students could be expelled from universities and even repressed. In my opinion, administration of universities could stand for students more, just if they were not so scared. Yes.
Дякую, Таня. І, будь ласка, сподарення Тетяна може...
Thank you very much, Tanya. And please, Tatsiana, would you like to share your opinion? What did the student movement manage to do, achieved, and failed to achieve?
More than anyone could ever expect it on this stage, and it's really, really impressive. But I also, as a historian, I would say this will be decided also within the next years, or maybe even tens of years, and in a long-term perspective, because what was achieved, what was not achieved, also depends on which influence these events will have on Belarusian society in a long-term perspective. I already have spoken about this. We need to bring this knowledge about this protest also to the Belarusian society, because and now, of course, it is known, but not on a scale it should be known. So it should be also already there in the collective memory, as I told you already. And therefore, I think it is important also not to lose connection. And this brings me back also to your question, what we can do for students here and there, because some students, they were able to leave Belarus, but some are still in Belarus, and we really need to support and to not to lose connection to them, that they feel also themselves a part of this, of this great student moment, of this great moment of student uprising in Belarus, that they won't be detached from it, because that they rely on this tradition, that for them it's also a part of their history. I mean, also for those who maybe who were not maybe directly involved in this moment, but still they are students, and therefore they belong to this tradition, even if they maybe were afraid or maybe were too young to participate. And of course, it also depends on who will write this history about this protest, about this movement. And it is still unwritten. Of course, we never saw so many articles and scientific publication on the subject about Belarus as after 2020, and this is great, but as you said, we need also more sources. For example, also I think about all these deleted chats that were, that we won't be able to reach as historians. Of course, it was safety was a priority, but still we are lacking them to recreate this history, because it was, of course, the history of great moment. It was a history of repression on the other hand, but it was also a history of, For example, digital connection, how people connect to each other. So you can write so many histories about this month. And maybe it would be also interesting to ask people who participated in this chat also what was there. Maybe they can still recollect, you know, some things. Also, the history of deleting this material. This is also would be interesting for historians. So I think this is. I mean, this is not yet over. Yeah, but the student protest, and it is still. Need to put effort in, and the results will be defined in the future. Thank you.
Дякую велике. Я дякую всім сьогоднішнім спікерам і спікеркам.
Thank you to all our speakers today. We have one question from the chat. Can we voice the percentage of participants of the student protest? So how many students participated in the protest? I have some ideas, but maybe some of the speakers also can share their opinion.
Please.
This is a question of one of the participants. Well, it's difficult to have some statistics. We can look at pictures on the 60th of August, for example. We can look at the general mobilization, how many there were people attended these protests, and of course there were students. There was also a paper that you are aware of, Aliaksandr, how many students were summoned by the so-called law enforcers. About 1,000 students were summoned, but about 1,000 persons. This is not a full figure, so we cannot claim the exact percentage because there were no sociological surveys. But anyway, it was the most powerful student protest in the history of Belarus. Well, there was the 2006 protest. Well, there were also the 10th protests on the Kalinovsky Square in Minsk. There was some figure. So it was an important figure, students who participated in this protest, but it was difficult to evaluate. Well, as for my side, well, it is a bit speculative, but answering the question about the active participation in any form of activity, I think that if we take average figure, including the regional universities, the figure is about 20%. But when we take the leading universities in the capital city in Minsk, I think the percentage was up to 50%. And when we talk about the general figure of those who were supportive of the protests, I think the figure might be even higher than 60%. But these are my speculative estimations. If you want to argue, please argue.
Different universities and different faculties, amount of students there. I can speak only about my faculty, which was one of the most protests. I studied on the Faculty of Mechanics and Mathematics. Of course, it's difficult to say some exact students. I would say so. Even more than half of students who studied in the same building with me. It is also different faculty of applied mathematics. So if we count students of two faculties, I would say that half or even more of students supported protests actively in actions.
Дякую, Таня.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Tatsiana, now, dear colleagues, dear friends, I'm very grateful to all of you for your participation. I think that we have touched upon many different aspects. Well, it's impossible to touch upon everything related, all aspects of the protests, student protests in Belarus. There was even a film entitled Gaudeamus, which was removed from YouTube. But I hope that there would be new books, new publications, new interviews, and we will listen to different opinions. We will have the stories from the other side, the stories of those faculty, of teachers or administrators who were expelling students. And we will see the picture, the right picture that we need to see from the academic point of view. Thank you very much for each of you, for participating in this discussion. We are on the beginning of this way of understanding, of grasping what happened then. Many thanks to Viktor Shadurski, to Tatsiana Yekelchik, and Tatsiana Astrouskaya. Many thanks for all those who joined us, and also to the organizers. Thank you very much. And let's meet during next discussions.